Recording. So, today we're going to talk about a still hot topic to this day, which is called productivity. And the question is there a silver bullet?
Spoiler alert, probably not.
Um, I think you can go further on the spoiler and say um, it's way easier to say what's not productive.
Yeah,
Um, so this chapter talks about a little bit about that. There's also an anecdote, but I don't remember what we have in this beginning here. So let's read. The word productive itself is somewhat loaded. The programmers working at some company wish they are more productive. They were more productive. Such programmers wish they are more effective. The tools are better. That there are fewer barriers to getting work done. Management was more competent. That working conditions are better. That there was a direct link between the success of the company and the efforts of the programmers. And it wasn't a struggle for the company to survive from quarter to quarter. Yeah, so this, I remember this. It's been a while since I read this one. There is a dilemma here. There is a like programmer companies look for programmers to be more productive, and programmers look to have companies be a safer place.
yep,
Which means that we would like to have more confidence that from this quarter to the next quarter things will be fine. Productive determinant management is to describe what an employer is or isn't. When an employee is productive, the corporation can enjoy a better return on investment profits. An employee who is unproductive is a candidate for layoff. You can be a candidate for layoff because of other reasons, but that's one reason.
yep,
Uh, Productivity is also associated with effort. A developer is less productive because he or she is exerting less effort than it is required. Uh, yeah, and then there's another anecdote here talking that a layoff list based on the criterion being effort solely. The CEO was willing for the manager to eliminate people who got good results but whose effort and enthusiasm was lacking. Yeah, this is very interesting because you can be you can deliver results without putting that much effort because maybe, well, there are a couple of reasons. Maybe the technology that you're using is better, or you are actually smarter than the average person, and you can actually deliver things with less amount of time, which we're calling, which is directly related to what we're calling effort in here. And you need to separate those two things.
uh,
Yes.
or maybe you just know what you're doing, and the other people around you don't.
That's being smarter than the average. But there's another dilemma going on because let's say that you require 1/10 of the effort to do something than everybody else. Then the question is, should we push the bar up so that everybody needs to keep up with you, or well, if the what is going to be the criteria to pay you in this case? Because I like to believe it's what you deliver, not exactly how much time you spent. So there's three situations. If you do the same thing in less time, we pay you less because you are working less. Or we increase the bar, so everybody should be realigned to that standard. Or we keep it as it is. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, that's actually one of the downsides of like being paid by the time worked. It actually discourages efficiency, right? To some extent.
Yeah, that's exactly the. Well, that's also a detail about this dilemma that I think we're going to touch later. about the whole. We want safety, they want the productivity, and that's a conflict of interest. Because if you are 100% productive, um, that doesn't correlate necessarily that the next quarter you're going to be there, because many things can happen. Bad decisions can happen. Government doing shit can happen. War can happen. A lot of stuff can happen. So it's a little bit tough to do an implication with those two things. And you're right, like the being efficient is is a little bit complicated. It's a little bit complicated. Uh, the points of productivity is not simply something between developer and a software problem. There are many other things between that, between the developer and and the problem. So there are social stuff, there are like soft skill stuff, management skills. Frequently, I hear of companies going to market with products the developers themselves say are not ready, and that's probably always going to be true because aside from the situation that you're hiring the right people from the get-go, you're probably going to have to do some patch-ups. That developers are so out of business loop sometimes amazes me when they could be such an asset to business planning. They don't have a crucial ingredient, a business education. That's true. Usually, most of us we don't have that type of education. Uh, and then there's the statistics here. United States, 80% of all CEOs of engineer-based companies are training business, whereas in Japan, 80% of all CTOs are engineers. Uh, are engineers training the business domain area. That's actually like such a revealing statistics, I would say.
That's kind of interesting, actually.
Developers assign their employees and during parts of a project in order to make the deadline. We work more. However, they're not granted overtime for the extra work a lot of the time. In my experience, developers average 60 hours a week year round. I am actually in 50. Like I'm trying to put myself on the 50 realm instead of 60. 60 is a little bit too much.
I'm struggling to push myself down from 50.
Yeah. Uh, well, when the projects are fresh and exciting, working these hours can be not only accepted but unnoticeable to the developer. I agree. Inevitably, though, this leads to burnout, and the developer moves on to the next exciting project at another company. And it is a little bit inhuman to expect more than 60 hours unless there's a routine bonus program or overtime. Um, the idea, this is actually like this is a tangent to what we're gonna talk about, and it's kind of a hot take. I don't think time is what leads to burnout, and I know that's a hot take. It's less about time and more about exhaustion. We like to believe that putting more time directly linearly leads to exhaustion, but in my experience, that's not how that works at all.
It depends on what exactly you're doing, right?
Not only on what you're doing, but how much endurance do you have? Like in my experience, this is more like it's a true behavior curve. So it's actually logarithmically increasing, and then when I reach a particular amount of hours accumulated, then it's exponential. So this gives this most of the time this puts me in a situation that even if I put overtime on top of overtime on top of overtime, I don't actually feel burnout. I need to go like all the way to the right, all the way to like a bunch more hours on that in order to start considering this situation. And I would say that it's both related to to the particular curve of yourself and to what you said, which is what are you exactly doing during that time? Are you saving the company or are you just doing bullshit?
Uh, can I be kind of sad that sometimes it feels like it's both at the same time?
Well, you need to we gotta understand which one is the most like percentage wise.
It's like it's both, but it depends on the perspective, you know? Which angle are you looking on? Are you looking from, I should say?
You should be looking from yours.
Well, from my perspective, it's still both. It's just, you know, consultancy stuff.
Yeah. And then we're gonna go to the anecdote, which is very, very rather interesting. So this is like a ludicrous dreamland type of description. And we're gonna try, and there is a lesson to be understood after reading that. But I would like to point out a particular parts of this story. So this is basically like a key PW development group of 8 extraordinarily talented developers. Um, so the group developed a new and modern spreadsheet specifically designed for the Windows environment. 2 people had experience with the product area. Um, where is it saying it's 8 people? I think somewhere it's saying, yeah, 8 people. 8 people there. They are very high caliber. How do you know that they are high caliber? Because in in 31 months they wrote 1 million lines of code, including prototypes. In that, these millions of lines is not counting the prototypes, but the amount of time is, which is insane, even more insane. So they wrote more than 1 million lines of code in 31 months, which averages in 1,000 lines of final code per week. And then the question is, who is doing that today? 1,000 lines of final code per week. 1,000 lines.
Not many people is the answer.
There is a few. There is a couple of questions to be answered. So, for example, are we talking lines of what? Because then we discovered C++ lines. I would say, and I think Gabriel also gives this impression very strongly, that we don't. Not all lines are the same. It's one thing to write out 1,000 lines of C, 1,000 lines of scheme, 1,000 lines of Haskell, and 1,000 lines of closure. Those are not the same. It's like
a thousand,
non-fungible,
a
non-fungible
thousand lines
tokens.
of a thousand lines of APL.
Yeah, even more insane. Yeah. So it's I believe non the terminology is non-fungible, right? So the lines are not the same. They're not exchangeable. Um, and then it comes a not so revealing aspect. They did not use whatever is a standard software process or methodology. So I think in here we are putting Scrum and Agile. They didn't do that. They
Pick
didn't
your
do that.
buzzword. They didn't do that.
Why that's not surpri That's not so surprising because I think every developer in their hearts they know this. They know that it after the beginning, which is being added a little bit of structure, like you have any sort of Kanban something, and you are actually just like making that so everybody can understand where what everyone is working on. After that, the point of diminishing returns hits fast, and so this is not surprising. Like, again, I think all developers understand this. It's just taboo to mention out loud, I think. Um, and we're gonna go more in a little bit of more detail. What do they actually did instead? So they're doing C++, right? So was probably not a positive productivity factor. But then there is another pearl in here, which is it provided a mechanism to separate implementation from interface, and this has turned out to be important to the group's productivity. And we are experiencing this right now. So Karuta has a very specific approach or philosophy to coding it, and we go through lengths in order to make the implementation, the interface separate, to the point that we establish a particular foundation of the interface and then we just use that, and then we have a very good time when we have to change the implementation because of a particular problem. Everything else stays the same, and we just change that core part. But as you're gonna see, they actually had meetings about the implementation, not about the interface, which is interesting because I thought it would be reversed. We would have meetings about the interface, and we just like trust me, bro, on the implementation. Um, Anyway, so then, as Gabriel noted in abstraction decant, when implementation is separate from interface is a complex object-oriented design, the ripple effect that results from changing an interface can be devastating. That is always true, causing many other interfaces and their implementations to change in response. This team recognized the problem and adopted a process of almost daily meetings to discuss internal issues, interfaces, algorithms, and data structures. These meetings lasted several hours a day. People who have a lot of experience with meetings tend to view them as counterproductive, which is also true. And indeed, they are when the primary topic is turf, and protecting credit for good results. At these meetings, however, the team was able to minimize the interface repo problem by giving everyone a view of the changes. In this way, the team members could immediately go off and change or extend the implementation to accommodate the interface changes, thereby quickly validating and rejecting them. Yes?
Yeah, it's almost as if when you're talking about the actual problem, pro meetings are actually productive, you know?
Uh, yeah, but I'm still not sure. Like, when you have a small team, yes, everybody can have the luxury of having a full-blown context of whatever everything that is going on. But with more teams and more people, I have a feeling that aside from like foundational meetings, which is like which data structure are we going to use, which should happen what once a semester. Aside from those meetings, I have a feeling that interface should be enough. We should not be going to lengths explaining a particular change of a particular tree that we changed inside of everything, but the interface stayed the same. Um, Moreover, by keeping architecture public, it did not get swept under the hug. Instead, it was gradually improved and extended, and that the language supported the separation of implementation from interface was important because it meant that there was a clear line between what was discussed in meetings and what was not. An additional benefit of the recruited meetings was that all members of the team knew exactly what everyone else was doing and how their own pieces fit into the picture. I think this is where like Trello stuff and Kanban boards are useful because then you can make awareness asynchronous as well. You don't have to have meetings for that. Although spending 5 minutes with like everyone in 30 seconds explaining what the fuck you're working on, I also think that's fine. But especially in a remote global scenario, I think a board should be fine.
Yeah, the problem with the global scenario is that time zones might become an
Yeah,
issue,
yeah.
right?
Time zones are sucky. Uh, but there's also this, right? Making it synchronous also improves the communication patterns among everyone else, which is important. The KPW group rarely used code reviews, and code reading and walkthroughs were rare or non-existent. Each member of the team had tremendous faith in the respect for abilities of the other team members. This is also something that is kind of a hot take because you when you know everyone, then you can have a judgment in which you trust each developer individually as a member of the team. At the point that you don't necessarily know them and they just got hired because of another process that is completely orthogonal to the team and you don't know this person, I feel that this is gonna like if you try to push this, it's gonna be a little bit artificial. Because who said that this new person, this new developer, is trustworthy to not have my reviews?
Yeah, it's basically like if you know someone is good, And you trust them to not make any kind of nonsense in the code, then you don't need reviews, probably,
And
maybe.
there are other problems that come from not having reviews. So, for example, conventions. How are you going to establish conventions if nobody is reading anybody else's code? Second, how are you spreading new stuff? Exactly. Because one of the most crucial good things about reviews is that you can learn how to do stuff in a better way. Because somebody else know a particular library or know a particular extension that you're not aware, and you just read it because you're reviewing, and you're going to be immediately aware. So I feel that this is all often like not mentioned, and it should. And the same happens otherwise, right? You are looking at a piece of code that is fine, it works, but it could definitely be improved if you just say, "Hey, man, I think you're looking for this particular extension." In the case of Haskell, for example, I already did this a bunch of times at the beginning when I joined the company. I was like, "This works, it's fine, but I think it would be more neat if you use this instead," which does the same thing. And then slowly but surely, I introduced a couple of conventions that I felt were very good, and the same happened otherwise. When I did some stuff that could be heavily improved, my teammate was able to introduce them to me without having a meeting for it, without having to read a document. It is just like a simple one-liner comment. That doesn't mean you should not write docs for it, but especially in a startup environment where you are strongly incentivized to push for features. Although I agree you should be aware that you should be writing docs afterwards. If you don't have the time for them right now, just go with the reviews. Although I also should point another asterisk on this, that not every PR is review worthy, right? So you can have PRs that are basically patches, like a hotfix, that is essentially like a nonsensical thing was pushed by accident. Nobody noticed. It broke something, and someone needs as fast as possible to fix it. A lot of the time, those PRs are just like not review worthy.
It's literally just, okay, replace this word with a different one, call a different function, or pass a different parameter, or whatever.
Yeah. After a year, the team was filled out with technically savvy individuals, even in management and marketing positions. Again, if you have the right people to bootstrap this thing, that's going to be the culture from the start. But eventually, if things grow, you will have to put bureaucracy on top of it because of the things that we just described. During the first year of development, system-related technical issues determined the architectural design. Early decisions never appeared in marketing collateral in early customer visibility discussions. The schedule was realistic and largely determined by development needs, though there was pressure to get things done quickly. This is unlike most companies I know about in which the marketing, sales, and upper management accept as a real date the earliest day they hear a manager utter, usually in the context of a bonus discussion. That's really not great, but well.
It's incredibly not good, actually.
I have even heard of a marketing head and a CEO cutting 18 months off the development manager's schedule. The result was the predictable disaster. Of course, you should recognize that this group's process was inherently iterative. Iterative. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Iterative.
Iterative, with a series of increasingly stable prototypes until the product was developed. Of particular interest, the relationship between the group saw how the group saw what it was doing in the constants of habitability and piecemeal growth we mentioned before. Habitability was encouraged by the frequent interface meetings in which the effects of changes in the necessary global interface space were made public. Team members were naturally aware of what was public and private in the system, and patterns could emerge gracefully. About this, one of the team members said, "Software is like a plant that grows. You can't predict its exact shape or how big it will grow, but you can control its growth only to a limited degree." Um, well, I mean, it really depends on the nature of the problem that you're trying to solve. if you're trying to solve something that has like a bajillion books about it, there's a very strong chance you actually know the height, like how much that thing can grow, how unpredictable it can be. But if we're trying to do new stuff, yeah, there is a it is limited. Your future vision is limited on it. That's true.
It's an entirely new species of plant that was
Yeah,
never seen before.
exactly. And and then apparently, according to this guy, the a good average for U.S. software productivity is 1,000 to 2,000 non-commentary source lines per programmer per year.
Per
So
year.
per year, like that was like 1,000 per week on the ludicrous Dreamland, uh, and we went from 1,000 per year of final code even to whatever 1,000 to 2,000 that are not comments per year. We have per week
That's
and I have
like
per year.
that's that's just 1.5 to 2 orders of magnitude difference. No big deal.
Yeah, that's just like the tragedy, like described. Um, 1,000 lines a year is about 4 lines a day.
I cannot imagine myself writing at that pace. That sounds torturously slow.
I would say that if you're writing APL, that's fine actually.
That's fair.
I would go further and say again it depends on what exactly you're writing, right? So the experience of this key PW group indicates that it is possible to achieve several orders of magnitude improvement over the industry average using common tools. Granted that the team in question was talented beyond the available to most organizations, this is asking only that programmers be able to produce uh, well, if you even if you discount their talent, um, it's still fair to ask 12 to 20 lines a day, but the programmers in the ludicrous Dreamland group did 200 a day, which again in C++ land that might be like there may be a lot of boilerplate in those lines, uh, and also depends on the styling, right? Because like because of it's a semicolon tokenized language, I think you can actually put a bunch of stuff in the same line. So you
You,
can actually have like
I mean, you could put your entire program in a single line. I don't think it's a good idea, but you can.
no, of course you can. You like that. There's a whole um, community of C programmers m- um, modeling the physical appearance of their code so it looks nice, such as like looks like a circle, or it looks like a word. You know what I mean?
Oh, those obfuscated codes
Yeah,
competitions and
exactly,
such.
exactly. Of course you can shape it with whatever. So I'm talking about more like in usual, uh, not so obfuscated code. You can even go further and say, okay, actually when you do these things, we actually put that in a single line as a convention because it whatever looks better, and then that those maybe 3 to 5 lines actually in one line. I don't know. Okay, so we are trying to understand this as a science. Hyperactivity developers organizations are a natural phenomena. The key PW groups is far end of the productivity spectrum, and well, there are more groups. And then during another example would be Lisp programmers produce 1,000 lines of common Lisp code per month per person, which is roughly equivalent to um,
350
350
to
to
1,000 lines
1,000 lines of
of
C++.
C++ per week instead of month. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
like,
again, not all lines are the same. Uh, requires doing some simple but expensive and time-consuming things. Okay, so we need to determine goals, which can include higher productivity, higher quality, lower maintenance costs, better documentation, and easier extension and improvement. We need to reliably measure productivity baseline so we know whether we are making progress. And we need well documented numbers. Yeah,
Yeah, good
this
luck.
can yeah, but this can be dangerous as fuck because this like not all parts of being a productive developer means writing code. Like there's a lot of time that you spend thinking and debugging and designing and reading.
Writing documentation.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm not even going to go to that length because I know that's going to make it worse. But I'm talking like when you are actually striving to make a solution scalable, for example, you're trying to understand, okay, I have this particular problem and I need to make it scalable. I need actually to make it generic. What are my language? I have X amount of tools. I need to make them generic in all the stack. What is the best approach to do that? Am I going to use a type class? I'm going to use not a type class. I'm going to use macros. I'm not going to use macros. I'm going to use any other feature of whatever my stack is. When you were thinking about that, that's not traceable via lines, but it is still being productive. So this incentivizes the Jira card moving game. And what I am saying is that that's dangerous as fuck.
Even if you don't go to that length, just choosing which numbers you are measuring is already a problem, right?
Yeah, yeah. We need to study rigorously the effects of programming language choice on productivity. We need numbers from controlled experiments. And then there is the factor that he's using from between Lisp and C++. We need to study the effects of various kinds of tools on productivity, environments, and faster computers. It seems offhand that good tools make for better productivity, but is this really true? And if so, how much this contribute? That's actually a fascinating phenomenon if you think about it, because since KeyPW group, computers got faster, but productivity didn't improve. Someone could even argue that it got worse.
I mean, if you have a more powerful computer, you can be sloppy with your code and it won't matter because the computer is fast enough, right?
Yes, but that's a little bit of a separate discussion. I agree that that's true, but if the measure that the way that you're measuring productivity is line of code, being sloppy is actually a good thing because you're gonna write more code, actually.
What if you are also taking into account customer complaints and they complain that it's slow on their machine, not yours?
No, but then that needs to be included in the measurement of the productivity, which I agree that could be a factor to make people less sloppy when writing performant code. Um, yeah, we could do that. We need to study all existing development methodologies and determine the factors that contribute to productivity. We must do experiments to find the best ones. I have proposals of best ones. We can talk about that after I finish this. Management in many companies not like studies that assume it is possible that the best development process do not mix with tight management control. Furthermore, tradition, law, government policy, and conventional wisdom probably not sit well with this assumption. So we must allow neither engineers nor managers nor tradition nor law to influence the outcome of the experimental group. I have a hot take. So I think tradition tells us that actually there is stuff that actually contribute to productivity, and we should care about it, which is motivation, which is culture, all of that stuff that is, how can I say, usually poisoned by the coach type of approach. Like, even though it's poisoned by the modern coaching, it is actually, there's some truth to what is being said in there, which is that when you feel that you're participating to a greater cause, to a greater thing, that actually improves our productivity, that actually extend the lifetime between yourself and the burnout, that makes the
Basically,
pointing line keeping going further logarithmically instead of being exponentially all the way through.
Yeah, basically, people need to care about what they are doing, actually.
They need to care, and that's tradition. Used to be tradition, and that's something that I think we should take into consideration. That's very powerful, actually. It's possible you cannot achieve all the goals for productivity at once. Perhaps high productivity means a little lower quality. Yeah, if you're counting the lines of code, for example, who cares if they are great lines or bad lines? This may not be fatal flaw if we know precisely what the trade-offs are, so we need to study the relationship between productivity and our other goals. Perhaps the best process has not been discovered. We should study other places such as architecture. If the proposed ideal methodology is developed, it should be tested with control experiments and numbers gathered. We should determine the relative contributions of different factors in the process. And there's another thing that I should mention about this topic. Uh, I have a feeling, and you may agree or disagree with me. I have a feeling that there's a lot of stuff that management would judge as bullshit, but it actually matters. For example, if we tell them that you should care about what you're doing, and it's your responsibility to convince me that I should care, they think it would be bullshit because they have a paycheck from me.
Yeah, no, no. I agree that management would probably not like that idea, and they would be wrong.
Yeah, they would be severely wrong, but you know why they're wrong. I know why they're wrong. But I think that would require a revamp on the management culture as a whole to happen. We need them to understand what we understand, and they need to be convinced. And I don't think that's an easy thing, because there's a lot of, how can I put it? There's a lot of,
I I have a feeling, Lemos, that if they actually understood that, they would be engineers and not managers.
I don't think that's true. I don't think you need to be engineers. You need to be someone that cares about your craft. Like an artist can understand us, a
I'm
musician
not
can understand us.
I'm not saying engineer in the narrow sense of a software engineer or a civil engineer or whatever. I actually mean in the broader sense of a
Oh, a
craftsman.
craftsman. Oh yeah, no. If you're using engineer as a synonymous for craftsman, yes, but I rather use craftsman to avoid that ambiguity.
Okay, so yeah, if they actually understood that, they would be craftspeople, not managers.
But who said that craft people can't be managers?
Well, they
Because if
would
you
probably not like to be
if
managers.
you think about it, a manager that is a craftsman understands people as the tooling to craft. We use the keyboard and coding as our tools. Who said that a leader, a manager of a team of developers, his gears are us. He needs to make sure how to properly utilize them and understand them and make them, and it is his goal to make us productive. If he understands from that perspective, he actually will conclude that, hey, because I'm a craftsman, I understand that I need to be convinced that this is worth my time and my craft. So I need to convince my people as well as a consequence.
because because they're also craftsmen,
Yeah, they are
right?
also craftsmen. That is that is putting a lot of this is a romantic description of this job. This is a very non-black and white thing, and that's why I think that's going to be like either impossible to implement or a very hard pushback, because requiring that your managers be craftsmen undo the commoditization of this role. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, we could argue that commoditizing in the first place was a mistake.
That's complicated though, because there is a lot of good aspects of doing the commoditization process. For example, it gets cheaper for everyone. It's get easier. The barrier of access gets lower, and I think that based only on that, it's a good thing. The problem is that when it's said that easy, anyone can enter, including people that don't care. And I don't think you can have the good without the bad. If you want everybody to have access to it, you need to accept that some people are not that is going to join it. You may not like it.
That's kind of sad.
You have to in order to have the good, you have to have the bad. It's always been like this. Um, we should develop a technology to support infrastructure and how to figure out how to introduce it to the industry in such a way that it will take hold. This could require a large investment, clearly designed and implemented. I think this is just even more dreamland. Like, even if we developed an ideal methodology and we proved it, I don't
That
think you can convince people that hard to change it.
It sounds vaguely like central planning. I don't think that's gonna work. People don't work like that.
I agree that you can interpret it as a central planning, but it's more like evidence. Like, hey, everybody agrees productivity is shit. So then I picked 150 companies and I applied a particular methodology. And it is the before and after, and here are the graphs. And this is my paper about it. I don't think that even if you do that, people will be convinced.
Yeah, that is true.
Uh, so there will be some surprises. So only some programming languages will matter for productivity, but not by more than 30%. My experience with C++ development started with a group just learning C++ and ended with quite an expert group. At the start, I estimated the productivity advantage of Lisp over C++ at the factor of 3 to 4. At the end, I set at 30%. But I think this 30% is inherent in some languages as an advantage due to unpopular characteristics of those languages, such as dynamic types. I expect a lot of language designers' egos to get thumped when we learn that what they consider important for a language is trivial or counterproductive. I think UPlay's concern is the inevitable result of letting mathematicians design programming languages principles, although I really love mathematicians and I'm sort of one myself. This goes back to the whole static nature that Gabriel keeps trying to put in our throats. That people don't change, they don't learn, they like particular stuff, they dislike another set of particular stuff, and it's better to try to work with them instead of against them because they won't change. That means that if they dislike mathematician focused design principles for programming languages, they will always hate it. And that means that it's become counterproductive if you try to use those languages with those people.
Mm,
Um, and I think there's something to be said about scripting languages that goes along that same line. People that like JavaScript and Python and all these other scripting dynamic typed languages, they will always love those things, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I like scheming, but I hate Python. What does that say?
Well, that says, even though there are divergences in the sense that if you dislike Python and you like Scheme, okay, you actually like some particular stuff that is exclusive to Scheme, but there is a common ground there, which is the dynamic typing, which is often used as the excuse because the cycle of development is faster if your code is breaking less.
Mm,
Um, so, and again, I criticized this from Gabriel before. I don't think that's a healthy assumption to just say, like, I understand where you're coming from. I understand why you're assuming that they will not never change. I understand the evidence that you're putting on the table. I actually live them myself. But I don't think I think we should revisit and say that's the problem. Like this assumption being true is the part of the problem. We should not try to make solutions assuming that will never ever change, even though that's what it seems to be. But this is at
mm.
least consistent. Throughout the whole entire book, he keeps mentioning this. So like I guess like if in 10 years from now Lean is the most popular functional language on top of Haskell and Clojure and everything else, maybe then Gabriel would be convinced that okay, I was wrong.
But Lean has dependent types. Types are values, Lemos.
Doesn't matter. It's a mathematician first language that got popular.
Ah, well, disclaimer, I never wrote Lean, so I don't really know it that well.
I also never wrote Lean myself, but I can, as far as I know, it is actually a mathematician's first language. It is a proof of system type of language.
But yeah, I tend to think that you either go to dynamic typing or you go to dependent typing. Um, the space in the middle is kinda eh. I guess Okemo and Haskell are okay, but like,
I would pick any of those in the middle from dynamic types. Again, I've been doing Clojure for almost 2 years, and I have yet to understand the thrill that you guys have. I have yet to understand. Um, we find that traditional software development methodologies are among the least productive and possibly produce the lowest quality. This is not a surprise. Everyone considers developers to be miserable. This is even before the market is trash to be hired and have a job. Like this predates, I don't know, 2015 onwards. The motto is that our lives are miserable or whatever. Such methodologies are governed by the need for management control and repeatability. That is, management wants costs to be predictable. On the other hand, developer wants revenues to be predictable too, but for some reason this is not possible to achieve. We'll find that traditional management has a crazy view on what motivates developers and that motivation is one of the larger productivity enhancers. We just mentioned this before. The first thing that I will fall is the view that management that I think will fall is the view that management is there to tell developers what to do, to set schedules, and to act as a conduit for upper management supplied team player dictums. A manager should be like the sweeper in curling. The sweeper runs ahead of the stone and sweeps away debris from the path of the stone so that the progress of the stone will be smooth and undisturbed. The traditional view of management seems to be based on a military style thinking. The best manager, well, there is a reason. Like you can make the argument that in military, in on premise, there is a motivation which is to defend your country, defend your family. Of course, they will be motivated to do that. In principle, of course, with the whole distance between actually not the distance, the disassociation of your family from your country. That no longer holds true. But at some point in time in history, that was true, and of course that worked because again, motivation worked.
yeah, there's like that kind of intrinsic motivation is just not there in most businesses as a rule.
Yeah. The best managers, in my view, are those that combine a strong desire to help his or her developers with strong leadership abilities. And again, this is presenting. This is actually um, he's mixing two things. He's mixing motivation with not being um not being not making our lives worse. So he's doing the comparison with the sweeper. That is the manager that makes your lives easier. He's just trying to remove debris from your path, right? So he's just trying to help. I think that's part of a good manager, but I still put everything I have on you need to be able to motivate your people. You need to make them convinced that their story of their mission will be a better, more epic tale if they contribute to your thing. That's how you get that's how you get them 110%, 120%. And I'm not saying this because I want you to exploit them. I'm not saying this like with an evil or malicious intent. I'm just saying that if you have a business that legitimately have a good argument to exist in the first place outside of making money, that's the secret sauce that you have in order to make everyone involved say, yeah, no, this makes sense. This should be done. This will make a revolutionize the market that this is going to be fitted in. I want to contribute to this. I want my name on this. If you have that part, that's the biggest hassle. That's the biggest thing.
I
Uh,
tend to agree with that.
yeah. I believe that leadership will prove more important than management. Well, part of leadership is motivating your people. Very few managers are good leaders, and I feel that American MBA programs and large corporations do not produce leaders. That's also true. Here's a quote from Ken Haas, who started as a corporate lawyer, became its CFO, and then became president and CEO. Uh, is there anything important on this quote?
Uh,
Oh, here it is.
American com-
Go on.
American companies are overmanaged and underled, so there's a premium on the latter.
That is true. I became perplexed by the fact that a couple of managers in the product development group got terrific results from their people, without apparently doing much managing. Although I don't realize it at the time, these managers were practicing the art of leadership, creating a vision of the group, aligning the group behind that vision, and motivating them towards it. While management and leadership skills are both important, American companies are over-managing under led, so there's a premium on the latter. For years, I learned from my peers in product development that or Jerry Crew, and even I try to implement some of their techniques within the administrative groups reporting to me. Although I believe in my heart that vision, aligning, and motivating could not have much success in the highly structured realms of accounting, human resources, and facility management, I was absolutely wrong. Leadership is for everyone, even CFOs. Yeah, and this is not surprising at all. This is not surprising at all. Um, the ability to convince someone that he or she is partaking something that is going to improve their story mission is something so freaking powerful. This is in all areas of human development. Like this is in marketing, this is in technology, this is in medicine, chemistry, everything that you can possibly think of that is about that it has some sort of craft. You if you have that spark that you can literally make it like someone incendiary just by describing that. Man, do you understand that what you are trying to build here is the cure of cancer? Don't you want to help on this? Are you sure of that? Like when you say stuff like that, having a paycheck is a side effect. It's not more. It's no longer the goal of it. It's you're gonna do this, and because of your principles, you think saving lives is important. And then on the side, there's gonna be a literal side effect, as we do when you talk about programming, which is gonna your bank account will receive some numbers. That's so much more powerful than just saying, "Do you want a bonus?" That's like completely different league. It's such an obvious thing, but I think it's completely ignored or forgotten or misunderstood. Um, the second thing that will fall will be the attitude and motivation is purely based on reward. Again, right? There is a CEO I know whose motto is "Tell me how I'm measured, and I'll tell you how I act." His view is that if a developer is told that following the schedule set by some manager will result in a bonus or a rise, the developer will follow the schedule. A lot of the times, a manager set schedule assumes that there will be no architectural changes. Even though a detour to the repaired architecture will often result in no lost time or even save time, management that rewards developers based on following schedules might very well get what they want, a product developer schedule on schedule. But also, they will likely get one that cannot be expanded, improved, or grown, and which does not fit the market's actual needs. Yeah, this is also something that goes into the ethics or the morality, right? Because as a developer, you actually, if you are evil, you can actually make a solution worse, and you know it's worse because it's going to guarantee your position. Like you can make it in time, you can make it work, but you know it's bad. And you're not doing it because of a lack of time. You are intentionally putting the seed there that will grow and most likely guarantee that you're going to be there.
Yeah, very much potential for evil there.
Well, I agree. Well, my understanding is that that's evil, but some people would argue that I'm just doing this because they cannot guarantee my part of the bread. If they can't guarantee their part, but I need to guarantee theirs, I might as well just do this, what I just said. Like, I'm not defending the idea, I'm just explaining. To me, it's still evil. You should not do it anyway. Like, the ends doesn't justify the means. However, I can understand that argument being made. Do you agree?
I agree.
Uh, the physical environment will prove a larger factor than previously believed. Alexander believes this, but management seems to think that a one-time savings in setting up offices, computers, and so on is more important than recurring productivity losses. If your organization is pooping along at 4 lines a day per person, but you saved 100,000
Uh-huh.
dollars by using those cheap cubes, and mine is humming at 200 per day, who is laughing all the way to the bank? We'll go on.
Yeah, it's like focusing too much on the short term and trying to pinch pennies and incurring like long-term losses. That just sounds unwise. And
Yeah,
yet it happens all the time.
yeah. But I need to say something because I know you, you know me. We both know ourselves in the sense that I know that you care about the long term. I know the philosophical reasons you do that. I know the practical reasons you do that. And I do that myself. But I want you to understand that from a business perspective, it's kind of like bold to have that view because you're trusting that the long term will come. When you're doing something for yourself, when you're going, like you're doing, I don't know, you're going to the gym, you're working out, that's up to you. You can even do it on your floor. You don't need to go to the gym. If the gym explodes, you're still fine. So there's a lot of evidence to make you believe that you're actually going to be able to go to the long term. That's not how business works, though. If someone starts doing dancing on international taxes every week, how can you be sure that the long term will come? Like, I know we like to criticize short term, both business people and management people, but I can understand that they cannot just say, uh, fuck the long term. Some of them may even be saying, I understand what you're saying. We should focus on the long term. But I cannot imagine that the long term will actually is assured. It may never come. We may go out
But
of business before that.
okay, counter argument. If there is no long term, then nothing you do will actually matter in the long term. So you can do whatever. But then you are banking on the fact that there will be no long term, right? Which
What you
you
said in the
might be
beginning is
wrong.
also not true, though. It's not because you don't have certainty that the long term may or may not come. That's what implies that what you're doing right now doesn't matter. Maybe there will be no long term, but there will be a medium term. Your actions always matter, actually. It matters for the short, which is like, let's put four. So imminent, short, medium, and long. Your actions will probably always, actually, probably no, always matters because it will be at least imminent or, and at the greatest, long term. Um,
Hmm.
I agree that when you are an entrepreneur, when you're trying to be a businessman, you are banking on the fact that the long term may exist. But can you, like, it's one thing to say that. It's another to live with that, have your money being spent, like your savings, your investors' money. Can you actually say with confidence that I am 100% sure that the long term will exist?
Well, the world existed long before you were born. It would be foolish to assume that it will end before before your lifetime naturally ends, right?
No, no, no. I'm talking not the long term of your life. I'm talking the long term of your company. Of course, of course, I have strong belief that I'm gonna be alive in the next 15 years, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, do you have strong belief that in the next 15 years your company will be alive?
Well, my company is literally just me,
No,
so
no,
yes.
no. In your yes, in the case of being contractors, of course, that one thing like is married to the other. But I'm talking about like creating a company in a more traditional way, which is you actually have a little bit of a hierarchy. You have people, you have employees, you have a product or a service, and you have to compete in the market. I don't know, man. I think I'll not be so sure as I am right now because to me it's kind of like automatic at this point. I care about the long term. Every action that I'm doing points to that direction. But I'm not 100% sure I would be so confident on that if I had people under my wings. I hope I hope that's making sense to you.
It is.
Because again, we like to criticize those people, especially if they are making very dumb decisions, and it's clear they are making some of those decisions because it's a short-term decision. And we should criticize them, but I also think it's understandable. Uh, we find that very frequent large meetings to settle interfaces will prove to be helpful. Some developers will find this distasteful, of course, because everybody hates meetings. But I think it's more what Marinho said. We just have distaste for useless or very unnecessary meetings. If we're
Like if
actually
you're set,
talking about real shit,
yeah, if
go.
you're settling an interface that will coordinate the communication between different parts of the system, that matters. You should talk about it.
Yeah. The goal of total design before implementation proved to be very unhelpful. Piecemeal growth will prove the right way to go. The software is like a plant. Yeah, there is another thing that I should say, which is there is some parts of a system that I actually have enough evidence and practical testament that you should not do it like this. You should not just see what happens. Because it's going to be really fucking expensive to undo it afterwards. So that's something to be aware. Not everything is that unpredictable. Reuse will prove to be a factor in only limited ways and limited situations. Some of the reuse guys won't like this too much. Reuse is important, but it's important to piecemeal growth. Many people hope there will be a way of storing up pieces of code in the library that can supply a basis for arbitrary use. Sadly, although I also believe this myself, I have abandoned that hope. Even with fairly common operations like sorting, it is difficult to come up with a piece of code suitable for all sorting applications. Some of the problems have to do with language choice, data structure choice, performance characteristics, names, and calling conventions. On the other hand, patterns of sorting routines are handy and popular, giving credence to the hope of the parodies such as the Hillside group. I think this is a little bit exaggerated. I actually think that probably there will be very well defined subset of use cases of sorting in your particular product. And your library should be tailored towards use cases of your domain. I'm not like the way that he's describing. He's basically saying, I want to make like the the divine version of a standard library. Which cool. You're gonna have problems trying to do that, as yourself pointed out. But I don't need a divine version of that. So yeah,
Yeah, you don't actually need a library that's good for all use cases. You just need one that's useful for most people most of the time, right? And if you need something that the library doesn't do, you can then just implement it yourself.
yeah. Well, let's hope that you're gonna have the time to do that. The real basis for use is frameworks. A framework is a model for the basic operation of some aspect of your problem space or business. When this model is properly implemented, um, it is easy to add additional tasks by using the framework in its code. For example, if you write software to track purchase orders from receipt through shipment and maintenance, you can easily add code to grab address for marketing mailings. Another way to put this is that object-oriented programming encourages you to model the entity, not the function, and entities, not functions, are reused. Which is kind of philosophical in a sense because the way
That
that
sounds
we
like an argument. Yeah, that sounds like an argument for relational theory.
really, I didn't think of that. Could you elaborate?
Because when you design a database architecture, you're concerned about what things are, right? You hopefully you have some concern in the back of your mind of how those things will be used, but you are primarily concerned about what they are. So you're modeling the entities, not the functions that they will go through, you know?
But there are there are relationships that you cannot model via entities. Like even though like you may say that this is a problem of SQL, which may be true. Maybe I'm just not educated enough. But my understanding is that if you have a particular entity and there is a special sort of relationship between entries in different tables, that's where you should do a function. That's where you should do a
Why?
function. Um,
That's
I can explain an example of that after the recording because I'm going to use this example from work. But as far as I can tell, there's no way you can mimic that only via entity modeling. But I can elaborate on it later, but maybe I'm wrong, so I don't think it's that important right now. But I have an example that I don't think entity would be enough.
I mean, obviously the other half of databases are the relations between entities, right? But those relations are not necessarily functions.
No, but in my case, it would be like if I could have Prolog to do my shit, everything would be turned into facts, schemas, and function. Well, not functions. How do you call that? Predicates?
Predicates.
Yeah. So if I had those three things, then I'm good for life. But in SQL, in particularly, I think that I cannot do all the power of a predicate via entities.
Uh, can you do a view that's not actually stored on disk? I don't know enough SQL to answer that. Do you know the answer to that?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't even know if a view could solve my particular problem that I'm going to describe later. But yeah, I would agree with you that if you had like a logic language, I don't have everything would be fine because that would be exactly what I need. Because I would just make the my particular case that needs a Postgres function, I would actually use a predicate instead, and then I'm fine. Uh, the result of this research will be a silver bullet. I actually had, yeah, I already talked about this. We find that productivity and quality can be increased by 2 or 3 orders of magnitude, average over a long term. This would be fabulous, but I fear industry will not be easily accepted means to achieve it. The last point is said. What I expect to find is that the mechanisms that will work best over a longer period of time than in traditional American business circles. Therefore, they will not be adopted because the traditional way results in short-term savings at the expense of long-term growth. Exactly what I said before. Uh, I can understand that, and I can understand that you need to be even bolder to believe that the tomorrow will exist in spite of the information we have today. Furthermore, although the key PW group had management accepting whatever it took for good development, very few companies are as open-minded. My experience is that management distrusts developers and feels held hostage by them. I have heard many discussions in which software company CEOs look forward to the day when software development does not require hiring those pesky programmers. They would rather not spend all the money buying better computers, putting in home equipment, supplying private window offices, and providing caffeine-laced drinks. Yeah, there is some sort of tribalism between the developers and managers because there's a lot of anecdotes, a lot of stories that in, enforces the belief that the purpose of a manager is to make your life worse. And on the other side is also true. Like the managers have skepticism that the developers actually being they are trustworthy. And I think that's also like that's a per, people's problems. I don't know how to say that differently.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a people problem, definitely.
the saddest thing of all is that three are no sources of funding for such work. I recently attended a meeting at which a government agency was seeking ideas for projects aimed at economic improvement in the software area, and there was 20 million to 1,200 million available per year for it. However, the requirement was there to be a technological barrier to the improvement, in addition to an unwillingness or inability for any given company to fund the work. That is, the ultimate goal was enviable, enviable,
Enviable.
enviable, but ultimately aimed at funding the same old Tinker Toys sort of technology busting boondoggles. You
Boondoggles.
boondoggles, which I don't know what it is. You know what this is?
Ah, it's like a doohickey or a doodad or
Okay, I see.
uh,
You know, sometimes it's a people problem, not a technology problem. Yeah. So this is the end of the story, the conclusion. Sometimes it's a people problem, not a technology problem. And that's the end of part two. So any comments before I finish the recording?
this point about CEOs dreaming of not having to hire programmers.
No,
That reminds me
pesky
of the
ones.
yeah the pesky ones. Yeah, that actually reminds me of the recent push for AI.
Yeah, actually, I hope there is a chapter in this book that we're going to be able to talk about that. Because yeah, it's related. It's actually evolving. This situation changed, and that is something worth talking about. Okay, I'm gonna finish the recording now.
All right.